Thanks, Mark. Is it just a coincidence you put me at the right side of the table from the
Depends
audience?
which side you're looking at.
Okay. Well,
He's on this side, so.
well, I'm going to agree with a lot that Andy McCarthy has said. Probably not a coincidence since we both write a lot for National Review that we agree on things. But I have to say I want to compliment Mark Metcalf on all the detailed work and research that went into this paper, and whoever came up with the title, Built to Fail, Deception, Disorder in America's Immigration Courts. It's a perfect description of exactly what you found in your information. Now, look, there's been a lot of discussion and hot debate in this country and media coverage over the problems that we face with illegal immigration, from the lack of security along our borders to the failure of this and prior administrations to fully enforce our immigration laws that we have on the books. We've had huge arguments and fights over the stopping and detention of illegal aliens, over the 287G program, which encourages state and local governments to assist the federal government in finding and deporting illegal aliens, over the extent of authority that state governments have to concurrently enforce our federal immigration laws, over what should be done with employers who employ individuals who are not here legally and not authorized to work in the United States, and arguments over whether, for example, the federal E-Verify program should stop being a voluntary program and should be made mandatory. But what's gotten almost no attention that I could find, and I did a Google search before I prepared for this, what's gotten no attention is our immigration court system in this entire debate. I've talked with people about this, even people who write a lot about immigration, and most of them really have no idea how the immigration court system works. They are usually surprised to find out that it's an administrative court system, and that the judges are actually simply employees of the Department of Justice, who, unlike federal judges who have lifetime tenure once they're confirmed, immigration judges are actually Department of Justice employees who are subject to the whims and political pressures of the political appointees that an administration puts in the topmost rungs of the Justice Department. And that means that they receive the kind of pressure that a administration puts in on whatever its policy preferences are, such as non-enforcement of our immigration laws, or, for example, as was reported by, I think, the Houston Chronicle not too long ago, instructions for wholesale dismissals of pending immigration cases, or lack of enforcement of deportation orders issued by judges, all of which we've experienced or are experienced. I'm not sure that anybody has taken a detailed look at this at all, particularly the reports that Justice has been filing for years. What Mark has found ranges from shocking to scandalous to something that ought to concern everyone who believes that we are a nation based on the rule of law. It's also important because for the ongoing debate that we're having about illegal the immigration population, what to do about it, we can't have a serious public policy discussion of that unless we have accurate information about not just the number of illegal immigrants coming into the country, but about the immigration court system and how it functions. Now, Mark's research, as has been said, reveals deception and disorder to an extent that, quite frankly, I never imagined despite my experience at the Justice Department. And it seems to be caused by a combination of sloppiness, incompetence, and what also seems like a deliberate manipulation of data and statistics by the Justice Department, as well as a weak court system that has neither the authority nor the power to effectively enforce our immigration laws and policies. Just a few of the examples of what really struck me when I was reading this that ought to upset and anger the American taxpayer. I mean, one is that aliens evade immigration courts more often than accused felons evade state courts, and those aliens are rarely caught, which is not the case with felons in state courts. From 96 to 2009, the U.S. released almost 2 million aliens after they had been detained, but then let them out pending trial for the immigration violation, 770,000 vanished and never showed up for their hearings. Nearly 1 million deportation orders were issued for this group of 2 million individuals, and 78% were for court evasion. The example that Andy came up with about statistics of bail jumpers versus people who don't get bail and stay in court, that's the best graphic I can think of how what a deception it is to have combined those numbers into one for trying to come up with an overall number that says how many people actually show up for trial. I mean, no honest researcher would combine two such completely different statistics into one number unless they're trying to deceive Congress. And let me tell you, I know, because I used to work there, DOJ has some very good statisticians. Good statisticians who would immediately look at this and realize, you really, this is not good. These are not good a way to do this from a professional basis. Now, the fact that many of these aliens who do immigration appeals, what was it you came up with, 96%? It was 98%. Don't have to do any of the things that any citizen has to do in the civil court system. You know, post bonds, pay for the transcripts. In fact, who is paying for all of that? The American taxpayer. That is completely unfair, and again, it's something that should anger citizens who believe in fundamental fairness. The fact that immigration judges cannot enforce their own orders, particularly their deportation order, explains why Mark found that there are 1.1 million unenforced deportation orders. And in fact, those orders just sit out there because it's up to who? Well, the Department of Homeland Security to decide whether or not they want to enforce them. And guess what? You know, if the policy preferences of a particular administration are that we really don't want to enforce them, we have 1.1 million unenforced deportation orders. I mean, that itself, I have to tell you, is just an outrage to me. So even if the states and even if the federal government were doing everything they could in this area, which I can assure you is not happening, all of those people who are arrested and detained would eventually end up in this immigration court system, which the vast majority of them would get released almost immediately, right again, where what's going to happen? They're going to disappear into the vast reaches of the United States, and all the time and money spent to find them, detain them, was basically a complete waste of taxpayer money. Now, I have to say, I know a number of immigration judges besides Judge Metcalf. All of them, the ones I met, try to do a good job despite the many problems that they have. Now, regular federal judges in the federal district courts and the circuit courts complain about their workload. Well, as Mark points out, in 2006, there were 233 federal immigration judges who handled 407,000 cases. Now, federal district and circuit court judges, there are a little over 1,200 of them. So there are 6 times as many federal judges as there are immigration judges. Those 1,200 federal judges handled 414,000 cases. So these immigration judges, with 1/6 the number, handled almost the same number of cases as federal judges in the federal court system, which tells you how overworked they are in trying to handle the immigration load that we have. I have to tell you, when this paper goes up to the Hill, and I'm sure Mr. Krikorian is going to make sure that all of the offices up there receive copies of this, what it ought to do is shake the rafters of the Capitol to make them realize that they really don't understand and have not been informed about the extent of the problem. And they need to give very serious consideration to many of the recommendations that Mark has made, including, at the very beginning, a very serious and sustained GAO audit, not just of the Justice Department and the immigration courts, but a GAO audit of the Department of Homeland Security and its lack of enforcement of 1.1 million deportation orders. They need to look at imposition of a cost system that shifts the burden of paying for this from taxpayers to alien litigants, implementation of a bail system that is exactly like the system we have in our civil courts and our criminal courts, so that you actually have to prove that you are not a flight risk. And serious consideration has to be given to what can be done to give immigration judges the ability to enforce their orders and penalize DHS for non-enforcement. Now, one thing I want to disagree with on you, and I should say I'm a son of immigrants too. My father fled communism. My mother grew up in Nazi Germany. So, you know, I believe in legal immigration. But what people in this country don't understand is that when the public sees the way illegal immigrants are treated, with the laws not being enforced, with people being treated as if they are legal citizens or they're not here illegally, it gives them, quite frankly, a jaundiced view of legal immigration too. And the best way of, frankly, prejudicing the American people against legal immigration is to allow what's happening with illegal immigrants to go on. I actually believe that we can control this if the political will is there to do it. And if the federal government does what it should be doing instead of what it is doing. And a quick example of that is the fact that under the Federal Immigration Act, providing sanctuary, a city putting in a sanctuary city policy, that is illegal under federal law. Providing in-state tuition for illegal aliens is illegal under federal law. Yet there are sanctuary cities all across the United States. There are at least 10 states that provide in-state tuition. Maryland just signed a law, and is the United States Justice Department actually suing to enforce federal law? Why, no, they're not. Instead, they're suing the state of Arizona for trying to help the federal government enforce federal immigration laws. So the priorities are completely upside down there. Most of the administrations that we've had, it doesn't matter whether Republican or Democrat, have not had the willpower to enforce employer sanctions. People always say, well, you know, if we start detaining and putting people who are here illegally in jail, we just don't have facilities for it. If employer sanctions were enforced, many people would self-deport because the reason they were here, the livelihood they want to earn, the money they want to send back to their families in other countries, they would not have the ability to do that. And if you have that all around, we can enforce our immigration laws and control our borders. Thanks.
Thank you, Hans.